Hey everyone, this is the Undying Nephilim, and I believe I am going to do something that I don't normally do. I'm gonna just kind of ramble on for a little bit in an unscripted video about a topic I've wanted to talk about for some time now, but I've kind of put it off, kind of to distance myself from the release of the subject I'm going to talk about. I'm not even really sure where to begin, but there's several people that have asked me my opinion on the new Zelda game, Breath of the Wild, and for most of them, I just haven't even answered. And to those people, I apologize that I haven't answered because I really wanted to wait a while before I formulated an opinion on the game. And that's because normally when a new, especially a Zelda game, normally when a new one comes out, I usually get it right away or I get it as soon as possible and I kind of jump right into it. And I kind of judge it as I go, and I usually give an opinion really early on. And I kind of wanted to do something different with this game. I wanted to give it a little bit of time before I guess you could say judge it. And it's been out for a while, and like with most Zelda games, it seems like most of the world loves the game. Um, Spoilers, I don't exactly have a particularly positive view of the game, but I'll go into more detail. But I'm really not sure where to begin, so I guess I'll start with what I think is the main reason I actually don't really see eye to eye with a lot of people. Not even just the Zelda games, but with video games in general. I should start by explaining one of the reasons I really enjoy playing video games. One of the things I've noticed on the just the general online community when it comes to video games, especially over the last, I want to say 2 or 3 years, I've seen a lot of videos and articles, and basically there's been sort of this backlash against story in video games, especially like cinematic. Games where they kind of interrupt the flow of the game, and you get presented as cinematic, and you get to watch it, and it sort of presents the story in a Hollywood fashion, or just a video where there's little interaction at all. And there's been a really big backlash against this, and I understand why. And I think the reason is because a lot of video games in the last decade frankly have really terrible stories. There really has not been that many. There really hasn't been that many games I can think of. Like, I can probably count them all on one or two hands. Probably one hand, like all the games that actually have really well written stories, especially really well written characters. Most of them are really bad. So I kind of understand why this sort of backlash against it has become really prevalent. Um, I don't agree with the solution, and the solution just seems to be just forget it. Just don't worry about the story in games. Just focus on the gameplay, 100%. Make a really fun game that players can just do whatever. Don't bother with the characters. Don't bother with the story. Just make a fun game, and there's a place for that. Like, I'm not gonna argue against fun, because I think in order for a video game to be successful, it does have to be fun. Like, even if there's no story, or there is a story, if it's not fun, it just ends up being a bad game. So I agree on that regard, but I don't think I agree with this notion that we need to give up on story based games, or at least ones that kind of that have cinematics, or try to weave something together and intermingle it with gameplay. And I feel like this is one of the main things I disagree with, as far as like why I play especially Zelda games. I notice a lot of people say they like this game because they can just go out in this huge world and just explore it and have fun, and that's fine. But for me, I like context. I like to know why characters are doing things. I like to see them change, and I like character arcs. I like to see characters grow and develop. And I don't think a story needs to necessarily be complex or original or mind blowing. Like a simple story done really well is still a really good story. Like the one that immediately comes to mind is the first Mass Effect game. That story is not really complex at all. It's basically an extremely ancient machine is preparing to destroy organic life, and you gotta stop it. It's a very simple story, but it has a really decent cast of characters, it has decent voice acting, and it's paced rather decently. And the funny thing about that game is the gameplay actually, especially in hindsight, is not the best. I actually think the first Mass Effect is really sloppy when it comes to gameplay, but I enjoy so many other aspects of the game that it almost makes up for the fact that, it doesn't have the best shooting components in the world. And it's not, the gameplay isn't perfect, but the characters, especially the characters, like everything's just, it's well done enough that I really enjoy it. And that's one of the reasons I really liked playing games, especially when I was, no, I still like playing games for this reason, but I like a good story, and I like really good characters. And that is probably my biggest beef with, I want to say, starting with as far back as Spirit Tracks, basically the last 3, 4, 5 Zelda games, is they frankly have really terrible characters, and in the case of Breath of the Wild, it doesn't even really have much of a story. I was going to say terrible story, but I don't think the story in Breath of the Wild is terrible. It's barely even there. And those are like two of the most important things for me when it comes to a video game, is I like a good story and I like good characters, and Breath of the Wild does not really have either. In fact, it has some of the most baffling characters I've ever seen in a video game. I am like, they are bare bones, even by Zelda standards. I'm not sure which one should I pick on first. I don't even know where to begin. I guess I should start with the one I think the worst, and the one I think should be most important, is Princess Zelda. I don't even know where to begin. I guess I'll start with her voice, which isn't exactly a problem with the dialogue or the characters, more so a problem with the voice actress. And I apologize to the voice actress. I'm sure she does a fine job in other video games, and I'm sure she's a nice person. I really don't want to attack her as a person, but whoever did the voice for Princess Zelda in this game, I believe her name is something Somerset, I'm not kidding. I stopped playing this game for, I want to say, several weeks because I could not stand this voice. And before I went into recording this video, I'm like, I'm going to try and keep this, cool. I'm not going to get angry, but I'm already starting to get a little bit passionate. I loathe this voice. It is the worst voice they could have gotten for this character. It is so bad. I cannot even begin to describe how terrible the voice for one of the main characters is. The best way I can describe it is, it's not exactly monotone, but I have a feeling the voice actress tried to go for this sort of stoic, I'm not affected by the outside world. I'm the stoic princess. But the problem is the character is actually a very emotional character in the game. There's scenes where she goes into fits of crying, and it's so jarring and weird. And another problem is with the voice is the actress that does the voice sounds a lot older than the way the character looks. This is especially obvious when you look at the Japanese voiceover, which I don't think is much better. It's annoying in a much different way. I'm not really going to get into that though, because I tried the English version. So the voice sounds much older than the physical appearance of the character. So there's almost this sort of disconnect. Like this voice would not come out of this character, and I haven't even gotten to the actual character and her character, the actual Oh, I'm sorry. I'm getting kind of annoyed now. Like the voice itself is that bad. I might sound like I'm nitpicking, but I'm not kidding. I passionately hate this voice, and I have to vent about it. It is terrible. Anyway, I've cooled off a little bit. I think I got a little bit too angry there, but where was I? Yeah, this game has extremely bare bone characters, and none of them really have any character arcs. Um, what comes to mind is I don't know how to I can never say his name right. The Dorito guy. I'm just gonna call him Ravioli. When you first meet him, he's kind of a prick, and by the end of the game, he's still kind of a prick. Then Daruk is basically Darunia. He's just this happy Goron who's just always kind of upbeat, and nothing really changes for him by the end of the game. And then there's Mifa, the Zora, who's basically a combination of the character of Saria and Ruto, and she loves Link. That's her one character trait. Oh, I like Link. I'm always gonna love him, and that's really about it. Nothing changes with her character. She just starts out the game that way, and I don't even think anything of that is resolved. And which actually leads me to another problem with the game. And no, I probably sound like I'm just going on complete tangents, but like I said at the start, this is completely unscripted. I am just rambling on whatever comes to my brain. So go ahead and tell me the video is terrible in the comments, and I won't do another video like this. But Mifa is actually a really great example of where I think the storytelling in this game goes horribly, horribly wrong. One thing I really hate, and this isn't in just video games, this is in movies too, is I really hate it when we're told characters like each other, or they're friends, or they feel something for each other. We're told this, but we never actually experience it or see it. Like with the case of Mifa, what's his name? The Zora guy everyone loves. We're told, oh, she loves Link, blah, 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 blah. They were such great friends when they were kids. You never see them as kids. You never actually see how this supposed great friendship with them that blossomed into love or whatever. Like, you're just told this, and then I think there's like 1 or 2 flashback scenes where she's just like, I'll always heal you, Link. You're the best. I love you. But we don't know why. We never see it. We never see why this character likes this other character. And when I think of other Zelda games, they actually show, like, the character I feel like she's an amalgamation of. I feel like she's basically a retelling of the character of Saria kind of smashed with Ruto from Ocarina of Time. This childhood friend that really came to appreciate the main character and then kind of got screwed over. In Ocarina of Time, we actually have little tidbits of, it's not much, but it's still more than what we see in Breath of the Wild. We have these little tidbits of, Link and Saria as kids. We see them playing the ocarina and learning songs from each other. We actually see little bits of their friendship and why they're friends. And the funny thing is, Link doesn't even say a word in that game. It's done mostly just through the actions of the characters. There's text blurbs from the character Saria or whatever, but in Breath of the Wild, there are a lot of things like that where we're told these characters like each other or have connections to each other. We never really see them except in the vaguest sense. And it's not just Mifa. Mifa's the biggest example and the most obvious one I can think of. Even with Princess Zelda, like, we have one really stupid scene where they're just kind of sitting around in a field and she's picking up frogs, and we have one of those stupid, oh, so kawaii moments where she just acts like a weirdo alien, and that's really all we get between the two characters. We don't know why she likes Link. We don't know why she chose him. There's nothing. This game is so bare bones as far as character development goes. It's kind of baffling, and I know the developers. I'm not gonna be too harsh on them because I know that wasn't one of their goals when they made the game. I can tell they wanted to just make this really big open world game where you wander around this really big incarnation of Hyrule, which is actually one of the positives of the game. I'll give credit where credit's due. I really do like how kind of comically big the setting is. I really like it. And the thing is, I don't really like that from a gameplay perspective because I feel like if a world is too big, it's just too much. It's almost like going to an all-you-can-eat buffet and there's like all these different varieties of foods and you pick like out two or three things and you're full and you're like, well, I don't really, I'm not interested in the rest of the stuff. I feel like that's actually a problem quite a few different open world games have, and this one is no exception. I definitely think there's not enough content to justify the huge world, but from a world building point of view, I still tend to like games that have really big fleshed out world because it helps it feel a little more real. And this game just doesn't have it. It's so bare bones. Characters are bare bones. The story is almost non-existent. And oh my goodness, Ganon, like I hesitate to even call him a character. He's more like this sort of vague, malevolent force of nature. I don't think he. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think he says a single word of dialogue in the game. And I guess that's not necessarily a problem, but I feel like if they wanted to go that route, if they wanted this sort of vague, like, force of nature that was just devastating the world, they should have created something new instead of take a character they actually started to develop in past games and just completely throw out everything they've developed. They were doing a really good job with Ganondorf. Like, one of the best examples that comes to mind is Wind Waker. They start to poke at his motivations, and basically they boil down to his people were dying. They were screwed. They lived in this horrible desert, and he wanted better for his people. So he sought, the means to achieve that, and he basically became corrupted along the way. And that was, kind of an interesting direction to go with the character. And then Skyward Sword screwed that up with Demise. This video isn't really about Skyward Sword, so I won't go into details about that. I might do a whole nother video on Skyward Sword, because it might sound like I'm picking on Breath of the Wild, but I actually think Skyward Sword is infinitely worse. If someone put a gun to my head and said Skyward Sword or Breath of the Wild, I'd be like, I'll play Breath of the Wild. Because at least the story is bare bones and not just infuriating. So, I guess, if someone tells me, pick a turd with a few kernels of corn, that's a disgusting analogy. But anyway, Ganondorf has no character at all. He really is just a tornado or a hurricane or a storm. He's a vague force of nature. And there's... this is one thing that really bothered me in the game is you sort of get this impression that Link failed in the past. Like, he went up against Ganon and he failed. And it's like, okay, well, now they're going to get the rematch. They're going to, Link's going to confront him and they're going to meet everything out. And you find out at some point in the game that Link has never actually met Ganon in the context of this game. He gets defeated by the squid robots, the Guardians, like, before he even comes into contact with Ganon. So, like, there's nothing between the character. It really is just a man going against a tornado, and it's like, that's boring. It's like, you could have done something so cool with Ganondorf. You could have set up this whole backstory between him and Link and actually had, like, meaning to their conflict. No, he's just an angry cloud ghost thing, and Link just powers along and gets a bunch of equipment and then goes after him, and I feel like I really am rambling on now. I don't even know where I was, but the story and the characters in this game are just terrible. They're the worst part of it, and to me, those are like the two most important parts of a video game for me. If it has a terrible story and it has terrible characters, it doesn't matter how fun it is. It's not gonna stick with me. I'm gonna, have my fun with the game, and then get bored of it, and then just kind of move on. And a lot of the older Zelda games, they really stuck with me long after I got sick of the games. Like, I love Ocarina of Time, but I can't go back and play it. I've played it so many times. I'm absolutely sick of it, but I still think about it every now and again, and all the things it did right. And I think long after Breath of the Wild is done, 10, 20 years from now, the only thing I'm going to remember from it is how fucking horrible Princess Zelda's voice is. That's really the only thing I'm going to really remember from it. Like, I might remember, how big the open world was, but depending on how the future games in the series go, that might actually become normal, so it might not really be special. But so that is the one thing I really disagree on with a lot of people. Most of the people I've talked to, with my friends, I've read a lot of reviews, is they don't care anything about the characters of the story in this game. They're just like, I'm playing as Link, I'm in Hyrule, there's all these cool weapons and this big open world. I'm just having fun running around, exploring, finding new things. Like, even one of my favorite video game reviewers, if anyone watches Red Letter Media, I'm a big fan of Rich Evans. He's one of my favorite. He's such a funny personality. He has like a laugh gifted to him from God. He's just really funny, and I love the guy, and I agree with him on almost everything, but I actually watched his opinion on Breath of the Wild, and his opinion on the story was basically, I don't care. And it's like, that's fine, but that's one of the main reasons I play games. And almost everyone, when they give their glowing opinion of this game, it's, the story don't matter, the characters don't matter. I'm having fun running around doing all this shit in Hyrule, and that's not enough for me. It might sound, kind of nitpicky, but this just, everyone has their own tastes. I like games that have, cool characters and good stories, and this one doesn't have them, and it's a shame, because this series had a really strong base of characters, and they could have gone in so many directions with them. They could have done so much, and they've just kind of, they've abandoned most of them, since every game's kind of basically in a new time period, in a new setting. We don't really have that many recurring characters, so even if they wanted to focus on character development, it's basically a whole new cast in every game. So I don't know, but even on a gameplay level, I think this game kind of falls short. What instantly comes to mind is the dungeons, which is really unfortunate, because this game actually has a really, really cool idea for the dungeons. I love the idea of the how come I can't remember what they're called, the giant the giant beasts that shoot the laser beams at Ganon at the end of the game. The divine beasts, that's what they're called. I think the idea of like the dungeons actually being inside like these massive walking, flying, or whatever creatures, I think that's actually a really cool idea. I don't think that's ever quite been done on that scale in a game before. There's some that have come close, like Shadow of the Colossus instantly comes in mind, but that's more like an obstacle course than a dungeon. But anyway, the point is, there's this really cool idea. Like, when I first, realized, wow, the dungeons are like, it's like Shadow of the Colossus, but better. And then you get in the dungeon, and I finish it in like 15 minutes, and I'm like, that's it? Really? That was like nothing. And there's only 4 of them in the game too. They're really short, they're really easy, and that's actually a problem I've had with a lot of the Zelda games. Is at first I just blamed it on me. Maybe I was just getting better because I'd played so many Zelda games. I was just learning the patterns, and I was getting better at the game, but they all seem insanely easy now. And the dungeons in this game are just, they're pathetically small. That's actually one thing a lot of people I've talked to do agree with me, is that the dungeons are just terribly small. So it's always nice when I find some common ground with people. What else do I not like? What do I like? Maybe I should talk about positives, but I can't really think of any. I already said I like the huge open world. I don't think they really developed it enough as far as lore goes, but maybe I missed it because there's stupid flashback memories I didn't find. But I don't like the aesthetic. I know that's kind of shallow, but I really don't like the way the game looks. I frankly find a lot of the Zelda games are ugly looking, especially during the time period they come out. Like, and I know some people are gonna be like, "Oh, you just don't like cartoony, bright games," and I'm like, no. There's actually a lot of games that pull off a cartoony look really well. One that instantly comes to mind, I think it's gonna be my new catchphrase. Instantly comes to mind, but anyway, one that comes to mind is Ratchet and Clank. That's a really good example of a game with a very sort of cartoony aesthetic, but it looks really awesome. This game doesn't. I just there's something about, especially like the environments actually aren't too bad. They're a little bit muddy, but they're not terrible. The thing that kind of bothers me is like the character models. It almost looks like too much light is like shining on them, and like they're kind of blurry and ambiguous. I don't really like that look. I would say it's better than Skyward Sword, which I still think looks ugly as sin, but I don't like the way the game looks, so I know that's personal taste. I'm not actually going to say that's I'm not going to dock that against the game. That's just my personal taste. I don't like the weird aesthetic they went. I don't like the blurry look of the characters. I'm very much a fan of more realistic proportions, more realistic environments. I'm kind of stuck in that. And another myth to dispense is that realistic is gray. No, realistic is not brown and gray. There's actually a lot of color in the world. I don't mind color. I don't mind if games are very colorful. I just like them to look good, and this game doesn't look good. It looks frankly ugly and kind of bare bones and barren, and I don't really like the way it looks, so it's another negative. It's a positive. I really should think of something positive. I do like the fact that there's tons of weapons in the game. That's one thing I've always wanted in a Zelda game, is more than just a pair of swords and like a hammer, a bow, and arrow. I like the fact that there's spears in the game, and there's these what are those things the Guardians have? They're not like lightsabers. They're almost like these energy axes, and I think that's cool that there's a huge variety of weapons, although they break really fast, which I don't really like, but there are actually tons of videos going into that. I don't really need to add more to that. There's people that have completely dissected the problem with that system a lot better than I ever could. I think King K no, it wasn't him. There was another person who did a pretty in-depth review of Breath of the Wild, and they basically broke down the entire armor and weapons system and exposed like how just flawed it is. And I like the idea that there's a lot of weapons, but it just wasn't done well, and all the weapons kind of handle the same. So that's actually one thing I'm starting to notice about the game. There's actually a lot of really good ideas in this game. Like I like the post-apocalyptic setting. I like all the weapons. I like the huge open world. I like the idea of the dungeons being inside these giant creatures. So this game, I should call it like great ideas, like terrible execution, because that basically sums up my problem with the game. It's like all these cool ideas just done terribly. But anyway, I don't know how long I've rambled on. I don't even know if any of you guys will like this video. I felt like I'd throw it together while I'm waiting for this other video to render with the Lizzle Foss. I should have that video up tomorrow. Demonstration of the Lizzle Foss in my game. But that was me rambling on about Breath of the Wild for at least a half hour. Completely lost track of time. Anyway, should have a video of the Lizzle Foss overhaul up tomorrow. Maybe tonight if I don't pass out, but yeah, and it's just a shame that all these characters and this world that I came to love over the last 15 years, it's never really going to go anywhere. These characters are never going to be developed. The world's just they're just going to constantly change, the lore and everything with every new entry, and it's just a shame. There's so much that can be done with this particular intellectual property. There are so many directions it can go in, and they just they're just really going nowhere with it. Just shallow characters. It's just a shame that I should. A lot of people think I really hate this series, but it's not. It's not really hatred. It's more so like you have this gold mine. This you have this treasure that so many people love. So many people love this series. You have something so good in your grasp, so good, and you've just squandered it, and you're doing nothing with it. You're not refining the gold. You're not making, something out of it. You have this gold in your hand, and you're just kind of waving it around, and everyone's going, "Ooh, shiny! I like it!" And then you're doing nothing with it. And for some people that's enough, but you could do so much with it, and you're not. These characters are never going to be developed. These characters I love are just going to go nowhere, and it's a shame. So much can be done with this particular franchise, and nothing's ever really going to come of it at this rate. Maybe when all the head honchos, retire and they get some new blood in, things will change, but for the perceivable future, it just seems like they're going to keep doing the same thing. They're just going to have, some bare bones plot, really weird bare bones or just wacky, stupid characters, and they're basically going to reboot the mythology in every single game, which, I'm a Tolkien nut, so I'm kind of a spurg when it comes to lore consistency, and for anyone who knows anything about the Zelda timeline, consistency is like the oil to this game's water. They do not go hand in hand. I could do a whole hour-long ramble on that, but I'm not going to do that because there's no point. Anyway, I think I'm done rambling, so I'm going to go finish up this video, finish editing it, the Lizzlefoss overhaul, and probably going to go to sleep, and then in the morning I'll upload it. And anyway, I don't know if anyone's still listening, but if you are, hopefully I didn't annoy you too much. Hopefully I didn't destroy your childhood by having a frankly negative opinion on a much beloved franchise. Nothing against any of you fans personally. I just don't really like these games anymore. They're very disappointing from my point of view, and haven't really enjoyed them. One thing I did like, I can't believe I forgot it. I actually like the designs for the Rito in the game. And one of the reasons I like them is because several years ago, for Hyrule Total War, when I was putting the Rito in the game, I actually came up with much more bird-like, harpy-like designs for them. Because I actually don't really like the way they look in the Wind Waker. In the Wind Waker, they literally look like they just went to Party City, got like some duck mask and glued it to their noses. They look pretty dumb in Wind Waker. So a few years ago, I redesigned the Rito and made him more bird-like, and I really liked this idea. And not many people liked it, and they said, "Oh, you're straying too far from the original designs. Nintendo would never do that. It's non-canon. You just blah 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 blah." And well, I should have stuck to my guns, because after hearing all of that critique, I said, maybe I'll go back and make them more humanoid. Maybe I did stray too far from the designs. Well, funny how that ended up. I have a little bit more ground to stand on, and I can go back to my old designs.
And at first when I saw it, I thought it was a fan film, and I said, that looks like crap. And then when I found out it was real, I said, that looks awesome.
Come to think of it, it's actually quite a few things I came up with several years ago for my Zelda game that have kind of shown up in Breath of the Wild. It's kind of weird. Well, I guess it's a good thing I believe in coincidences. Anyway, thank you guys for listening. If you enjoyed this ramble, let me know. If you absolutely hated it, go ahead and tell me this was the dumbest thing I've ever made, and probably won't do one in the future. Anyway, have a good one.